by, alone inside. He's got the breakaway with the touch to the right. Goal! Everything you wanted from this debut. It's Brandon by. Taking a shot with the left. Goal! Isaac Friend from 25 yards out. The equalizer. Will Kidd with the touch of the goal. It's a go-ahead goal. Minneapolis City.
This is the People's Pitch Podcast, the official podcast of your Minneapolis City Soccer Club, brought to you by Summit Brewing Company.
Hello, soccer fans. We missed you guys after a few weeks. This is the People's Pitch Podcast, the official podcast of your Minneapolis City Soccer Club, and I'm your host, John. With me tonight is my main man, Twitch superstar, the Nate Morales. Nate, it has been a hot minute. We squeezed in a few fake shows, one last week, but how you been, man? What have you been up to?
Oh, not much, man. I have been, just eating takeout turkey and avoiding the Black Friday.
I mean, was Black Friday really that much of a thing this year? I feel like it was like
No.
Cyber Week.
Cyber Monday or whatever. No, I didn't even get a hold of any of those deals, really.
I ducked out and brought one of the boys to the shop while it was closed, and I did a little bit of Black Friday shopping at the shop. I got a pair of joggers, picked up a unicorn for one of the boys.
Yeah.
I got one of the new pint glasses. So
sweet.
I was like, I'll shop local.
I also did have an appointment at the shop on Saturday, so I got to see Dan, say hi.
Mm-hmm. And
that was
see
pretty cool.
The disarray that the shop is in.
Yeah, it was not clean.
No, the shop has not hit preseason form yet. It's still in off-season mode.
That's okay. Well, John, there's, as you can tell that we just spent 5 minutes talking about the state of the shop. There's not a ton to talk about right now. We're in kind of the soccer desert. We're on lockdown, part deux, but we do have some topics that have popped into mind this week that we really wanted to get together and just shoot the shit about. Yeah. The first being, of course, Diego Maradona passed last week, and it's really hard to lose a legend like him without talking about his legacy. So we'll do that. The member meeting went down, and so we want to go through what happened at the member meeting, maybe for those who weren't able to call in, or for those that are curious, and kind of get your take on the direction that things are moving in the club. And then this is something that is kind of interesting, man. A new local addition to the NPSL North was confirmed today. So we're going to talk Joy Athletic Club. So let's get this started, John.
Absolutely. So as noted, and if you're a soccer fan, you already were well aware that Argentine legend Diego Maradona passed away at the ripe age of 60. So kind of, not necessarily like the late legend passing away. For some folks, it was just the ticking time bomb finally going off. But for others, it was really a shock that a person so well known and beloved, regardless of some of the off the field troubles that he's had in his past, was gone so soon at 60. But before we dive in a bit more on him, I'm kind of curious. We haven't really talked about it before. What was your introduction to Maradona?
Well, inevitably, it's got to be World Cup Soccer 2010, really, which is the first time I watched soccer with any volume, and it's the first real World Cup that I watched too. Of course, it feels like every World Cup they talk about the hand of God, the handball goal, right? And then again, 4 years from then, Suarez bites, gets ejected for the bite, and it draws comparisons to the handball. So not until more recently have I really come to understand really how great Maradona was. It feels like every time he was brought up, or he's brought up on in that situation, it's kind of like a joke, like just another crazy thing this crazy guy did. But really, he's just a crazy, tragic genius.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. A tragic, crazy genius is a really good way to put it, because of just the fact that if you weren't cued into soccer between 82 and 90, you really don't know all of his exploits, right? You're kind of out in the dark. So essentially, want to go through. I'm calling it a quick refresher on his resume, but this is going to get a little long for some folks. But hopefully, some nuggets in here that some people didn't really know about, and then maybe talk a little bit about how I was introduced to this legend. So, as far as his resume goes, as a player, he started off his career for local club Argentino juniors outside of his hometown of Buenos Aires in 1976 at the age of 15. So this guy went pro at 15. And that's, I assume, like in countries like Argentina, maybe Brazil, maybe even, Peru, some of the Central American countries, maybe that's a little bit more common. But for folks that listen to us in our world, a 15-year-old playing professional soccer with men isn't really a thing. Would you agree?
No, not at all. No, I mean, when you see it at like 16, 17, it's like in the MLS, and these kids get like 5 minutes at the end of the game or something because they play for a squad like Sporting KC, who's got a really good youth program. And that's kind of part of the development, is give them just a few minutes.
Right. We're talking like full on pro in the first division in Argentina. So after a decent spell to begin his career, he was then off to Boca Juniors, which at that time, I feel like he was starting to fully gear up and cement his spot in the national team right before the 82 World Cup. So from a global perspective, that was kind of his coming out party. The buzz was starting to hit other shores, that there's this younger, like world-class talent that maybe people didn't know of, because it'd be hard to believe before the age of the internet that a lot of people in, say, like England were watching Argentine soccer. It was 82 in Spain was his coming out party. And he had just been signed from Boca Juniors to play for Barcelona right before that cup. And the cup was in Spain. So things were really aligning for him at that point in his career. And he showed out during that World Cup, eventually starting in all four of the first four matches, and then into the fifth knockout match, where ultimately, as you will find out later on in his career, cooler heads did not prevail, and he smashed some guy in a frustrating 3-0 loss to Brazil, and was sent off. So kind of the early stages of the crazy Maradona were put on full display to somewhat of a televised audience. After two, let's just call them rocky years in Barcelona. I mean, he was a fantastic player for Barcelona, but it's still like the off the field stuff started to kind of creep in. His lack of effort from a training perspective. I mean, clearly, if you're dying at 60, and from what we're going to learn about in a little bit here, if you already don't know it, like just not a training player, and gained a lot of weight. I've
seen some of the clips of him at training. He's definitely not a training player. He just loved to just play and F around. Yeah,
just blow the whistle, roll the ball out. Let's get after it. So that's why I say like rocky years. He made a very interesting and most likely his most important move of his career right after his 2 years in Barcelona, and that was being signed by Italian side Napoli, where they actually broke the bank at that time, and it was a world record transfer fee to sign him. And he really rescued a club that was kind of falling out of favor in Serie A at the time, and I would kind of liken it to like Lewandowski, even though he's an angel compared to Maradona, but like Lewandowski all of a sudden going to like Schalke and then like winning 3-4 Bundesliga titles and a bunch of cups and ultimately a Champions League. That was kind of the gravity of his move to the Serie A. And then you really weren't seeing any teams outside of your typical AC and Inter, maybe Juventus winning the league title. And then this Argentinian guy comes and single-handedly just lifts the entire town, as well as the team on his back, winning multiple league titles, couple cups, on the back of 138 appearances and 81 goals, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
He led the Serie A in scoring, I think, like 4 out of 5 years, and I think the year he came in second, it was like some ungodly number that some African guy had scored, and he was on the pace with the guy. So this was, also the time where we had the infamous 86 World Cup in Mexico, where this dude's stock just took off. I mean, he was basically, in my opinion, made for TV soccer. Like every time he touched the ball, he was electric, and a player that was just light years ahead of his time, and really special to watch. In that World Cup, they pretty much cruised through the group stages. Outside of a very controversial match against Italy, where it was very divided between the Italian people from Napoli who loved him as a member of their community and what he was doing for their club, and then also an enemy being that he was playing for a different country. So it was very much like some really cagey stuff happened in that match, where when he did eventually go back after the World Cup, he wasn't as well received that he was before he left. So
Yeah.
Very much so like the hero villain, I would say. Then comes the England semifinal game, where he scored one of, I believe still to this day, if you look it up, the best individual goal at that high of a stage in a world championship. A solo effort that saw him pick up the ball at the midfield and dribble through 8 English players and slot the ball home. Then with the game tied 1-1, insert the hand of God goal.
Yep.
For those of you who don't know that, you're probably not a soccer fan. But for a refresher, he latched on to a cross that was kind of put around in between the goalkeeper and him around the 6-yard box. And the guy's 5'7", maybe. He outjumped a world-class goalkeeper for England, and apparently headed the ball past the goalie. But as we know now, with no VAR, he did not. He used his hand, and then that basically sent the Brits packing. And they still today have not made a final since 1966. So obviously, like I said, no VAR to dispute the obvious infringement. And then what happened after that was 11 British guys just shy of ending the referee's life, screaming at the guy. The goal was allowed, and then Argentina then went on to hoist the cup. So after 86, there were a few more years of quality, I think, on the field, but where things kind of went south for him was it is like kind of like I said, that hero tragedy. When he moved to Napoli, he met the sweet coca plant, and his rampant drug use kind of started at that point. And he's one of those athletes that was very two-faced, where like off the field was like involved in drugs and also what we find is the Italian mafia. But then when like the whistle blew, no matter if he was like out partying the night before, the dude was fantastic and he was performing. So it's kind of hard to like, at that time when there was no social media, to like shed a light on how he was acting off the field. And I think that's where like a lot of the tragedy that moved into the later half of his career and his life was that, I think the years kind of caught up for him. There is a fantastic documentary, I don't know if you've watched it yet, called Maradona that HBO Sports did. I would highly recommend watching it, especially now, because it really goes into his life off of the field. And I mean, we're talking like armed guard. Like he had like a posse of armed guards that were with him 24 hours a day because he was getting paranoid that the mafia was trying to kill him. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it was. Have you seen it?
Yeah, it's really sad, man. We watched it, and I think we watched it because we wanted to see if it would be something for the boy to watch, kind of like the Pele movie that we liked a lot. Like it was, that documentary about him, or not documentary, I guess it's a movie about him. And we thought, oh man, if he loved Pele, he might love Maradona's story. Oh no, it's very, very heavy. And it really is super sad to see, whether it's because of the drugs or because of his, because of the drugs that he hooked up with the mafia, or was it because of his fame and basically like he was the most famous person in Naples, right? So the mafia maybe latched onto him for that, to be able to use him and leech off his money. Like imagine how rich this guy was for their little world. And just to be able to get that constant funnel of drug money into their organization. That had to be magic for them. It's just terrible that his life ended up that way.
Well, I mean, and it makes sense when you watch that documentary. I knew about some of it. I mean, I was like 5-6 years old when that was all going on. So It wasn't like I was like, hey Dad, is that the guy who I saw in the World Cup that's now, super high on drugs? I wasn't there in my life. Right. But watching back again, like, it just makes sense that you'd see him in the stands of like a Boca game, like throwing double birds at the camera when they scored, and like, just like, and like, going on TV and interviews and like falling out of his chair, like shit like that, where you're like, it's like a lot like I don't know how familiar you are with Paul Gascoigne from England, like very much so the same situation, but like a decade later.
Wow.
Where booze was his problem, and like, the guy's still alive, and I think he's kind of gotten his shit together, but like, it's still just a tragic fall of like an icon, and it does make sense. But to not labor this too much more, he would appear in the 90 and 94 World Cup, retire after that, and started managing, which was a fucking terrible idea. I don't know like, you thought, like, I don't know what people were thinking. Like, I mean, I know what they were thinking, like, let's latch on to Maradona as our manager, and he was so great as a player, he must be a great coach.
It happens all the time.
Yeah, it happens all the time, and you're like, oh, like, we knew he did drugs, but like, he's acting a little weird today. Like, he was such a mess. He never lasted long, more than I think 2 seasons at a club, and they were always weird clubs that he managed. And then for some awesome reason, in 2008, someone thought it was a wonderful idea to give this guy the keys to the Argentine national team, and they ended up bowing out 4-0 to Germany in the quarters of that World Cup. And mind you, this guy was given like a Tesla-built rocket ship to go to Mars with the players he had on that team. So I'm just going to list off the players that I feel people will know. But there were even more on this 30-man roster. So I won't read all of them. But Sergio Romero, Nicolas Otamendi, Gabriel Heinze, Martin Di Michelis, Walter Samuel, Juan Sebastian Veron, Javier Mascherano, Angel Di Maria, Maxi Rodriguez.
That's
Javier
a young
Pastor,
Di Maria too.
Yep, Lionel Messi, Gonzalo Higuain, Carlos Tevez, Sergio Aguero, and Diego Milito. And funny thing is that Sergio Aguero is actually his son-in-law. He married his daughter.
Oh, really?
So yeah, and so yeah. But think about that. Think of your attack in front of all the guys that I mentioned from a defensive standpoint. You start with Mascherano, then you have Di Maria, Rodriguez, Pastor, Messi, Higuain, Tevez, Aguero, and Milito. Like, you should score 19 goals a game with that team. So clearly, he should have won the World Cup with that type of engine. So again, like, whoever's brainchild that was should have been fired immediately. But yeah, that's kind of it, man.
You asked me, John, what was your introduction to Maradona? Because obviously you've been around soccer since you were a baby. Like, how did you get to know him and watch him?
Well, it's kind of funny because I mentioned before, like, when Dan was on too, when we were talking about like growing up together, I was the only person who was in I don't know how many towns that we actually got soccer games, because my dad installed one of those like massive satellite dishes in our backyard. Yeah, like the ones that like could pick up like, like stuff from a space station, because they were so big. And we'd be out there trying to like move it around to get the reception for soccer games. So we actually, my first dip into not only just Maradona, but like big soccer was the 86 World Cup. And I remember sitting down with my dad and watching pretty much every game that there was on TV that wasn't when he was at work. And the ones where he was at work, my mom was feverishly trying to tape him on a VHS, VCR, and we were watching them, late into the night. My dad letting me stay up and watch games. And I pretty much watched all of the games in the 86 World Cup for Argentina. And my older sister, who was kind of in and out of her love for soccer, at that time, she was really into it as well. So it was very much a family atmosphere to watch, and not just watch like Germany, who our family pretty much backs in World Cups outside of the US. But it was made for TV time, like appointment TV, where we would watch Argentina play, and just to watch my dad be amazed at this player and talk about how like he truly is unstoppable. So that was kind of my introduction into him. I did get a chance to watch a few of the Napoli games in the European Cup games, most notably against his last run at the European Championship, where he lost to a pretty loaded Stuttgart team. But it kind of fast forwards then as like, then I go in that dark period of not knowing like all the drug stuff, all the things were following him. Obviously watched the 90 World Cup because the U.S. made it, and saw him like as a shell of himself, but still a high performer in the 90 World Cup. But then, and also in the 90 World Cup, like the fact that it was in Italy, and that's where, where he kind of applied his trade. There was a lot of storylines around that, and I was old enough to kind of get that.
Yeah.
But in 94, being at the World Cup was in the U.S., like I was pretty much like riding the rails with my dad. We went to quite a few different cities in the U.S. to watch games, and I was able to watch his last game in Foxborough and Boston when they played against Greece.
Oh, really?
And he scored in that game, and then that subsequently was his last professional match because he failed his drug test right after that game. So I was able to actually watch him live, and again, now he had moved to like being a total shell of himself, but still was the best player on the field. And fantastic to watch. And like the energy you get when like, I don't know if you've ever gone to see like LeBron play, or like you got to see Jordan play back in the day. Like when you're watching someone that's that much better than everyone at the sport you're watching, there's like an energy, whether it's a home or away match, but you're watching this like world-class superstar. When they get the ball, like everyone gets excited.
Yeah.
And like now it's like you're talking like 50,000 people getting excited for like when someone makes like a 5-yard pass, and like you can feel it in like you can feel it in your chest, like just the excitement and the energy.
Like something amazing could happen at any moment.
Yeah, and his goal he scored was like individual brilliance. And I remember my dad like looking at me afterwards, and we're all like, I'm jumping around like my like like the U.S. won the World Cup, right? Like I'm like like tears streaming down my face, and my dad's just like, that was something you'll never see again. Like that's so special, like what that guy just did, and like it was cool to not only share that moment with my dad, but also get to see a legend like that play live. Like I've seen a player I've seen Messi play live. I've seen a couple like big stars play live, but I didn't feel the energy I did when I saw Maradona play. It was like there's nothing that can compare to it.
Amazing, man.
So I guess at the end of the day, troubled past or not, he was definitely one of the best players ever to lace up the boots. And for a soccer fan, I'm sad. That he's gone, and I actually, as a fan of a train wreck, I'm sad his hijinks are gone, because I found them sadly hilarious, especially when he was managing teams, and watching his press conferences on translation were pretty funny. But again, it was sad, and rest in peace, number 10. I guess that's the best way to leave it.
Yeah. Well, John, one of the other things that has happened since we last talked was the annual member meeting, and this year was a little different because obviously there was no season, right? And so it was a matter of, usually we get a nice update on, or a nice recap on how the season went, and Dan gives
recruiting.
Dan gives us the financial breakdown of how ticket sales and all that stuff helped the bottom line, and you can see if the club made or lost money. But really, this year was super, super strange, obviously, because there were 0 games and no opportunity.
Virtual.
Yeah, and even no, everything was. I mean, I think we were probably the most consistent content that the club had. So
yeah,
so it's like stars. So it's kind of like what we were this for once. Damn it!
Yeah, the little guy won.
So really, this member meeting is a lot different. Like not a lot to talk about in the game front. Not a lot of on the field stuff to talk about. Dan went into a lot of detail into the financials, though, which is really interesting. But now that we have 3 clubs or 3 levels of play, this club has really come a long way. And there was a lot to talk about at this member meeting. The coaching staff announcement alone was incredible in length, something like 8 to 10 new coaches this year, just to handle the workload. And that was very cool to see how big this organization has come. Since the days when it was just Keith and Jeremy and you.
Yep.
So welcome to all the new coaches. We've been able to talk to a couple of them, both Coach Michael and Allie. That was very cool. If you guys want to check those episodes out, they were the last couple. We've talked to a couple of the new coaches, both really cool people with their own, with a ton to add to the organization. So very excited for that. But the really interesting thing for me was how lucky financially this club is. Because
I would say luck is the best way to describe it.
Really, if you could pick a year to not play soccer, it would have to be the year that you launched like 7 new kits.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we had our 2 new home kits, our 2 new kits for the NPSL squad, our Minneapolis, our city, our U23 kit,
our Open Cup kit,
the Open Cup, the 3rd kit, which was ripped off by Manchester United, the Futures kits, like so many cool things for people to buy from the club shop. It really was an okay year to get a boost from merch sales. Like, of all the years that you could pad your pocketbook with merch sales, this needed to be the one, and the club lucked out, and it happened.
Yeah, I think you're pretty spot on. Luck is the best way to describe it. And I think the main takeaway from that portion of the financials was that it was all. And I don't know if you listened to Dan on the 10,000K pitches today. He talked about how all of this started with the members outside of like 6 people not asking for their money back from 2020. And then that was where our luck started, because that lifeline was given to us to stay sustainable for a year where we weren't going to have soccer. And I shouldn't say weren't going to have soccer. We're going to have paid soccer.
Mm-hmm.
And that gave us this like tumbleweed of momentum where even during a pandemic where people were losing their jobs or being downsized, people were buying our stuff it more than ever. And it was really a fantastic thing for the club, and a lot of thanks go out to the fans for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else from the update that you want to talk about? I mean, those were kind of the 2 big meaty parts of the member meeting until we got to the votes.
I think the main thing that we didn't talk a ton about, but it was touched on, was just like the launch of the Futures program.
Yeah.
And then the piloting we did for it in the fall when we could play again, and actually giving people soccer. And we had Paul from the member board on, which was a fantastic episode if you guys want to watch it.
It really was.
We didn't talk a ton during the member meeting about how great that actually was, to be able to dig out of all the shit everyone was going through together, to be able to play in front of a small segment of people, to give not only the players something to work towards, but also the fans to watch.
Yeah.
I think that was something that we probably could have talked about a little bit more, but also easy to kind of skip over because it wasn't our typical topics of conversation for the member meeting.
Yeah. And 3, the cool thing about the member meeting, and part of the cool thing about being members, is that we do get to vote on things club related, the direction of the club, new additions, things like that. And so we had a number of votes. I think 3 votes that we were able to do. The first was about the coach's stipend. So the first member vote was on whether or not to provide for a stipend in the budget, and as a new expense, probably not necessarily tied to team operations. This needed to get approved, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So we know that coaches at City are purely voluntary, and they spend a good amount of time on the club, and that's time that they could be spending making money. They could be spending that time getting paid by someone like Alchemy or St. Croix or whoever, right? So it felt only fair that Minneapolis City, as a club with some income, would be able to pay them a little bit, compensate them somewhat for their time, right? You agree with that?
100%. I mean, we've been trying to figure out ways to give something to our coaches, because it is such a massive commitment to be a member of our coaching staff, because you're not just a coach, you're also like the team mom, and you're also the administrator, and you're everything. You're the grunt washing the kit man. You're the guy carrying the water jugs, like you're pumping up balls. Like there's so much that goes into from a coaching perspective and a team management perspective that we've been trying to think about ways to do it, but financially it just didn't work. But now, with all the luck we had that we just talked about, we now have that opportunity, and it's a no-brainer for club leadership for us to say, like, we got to try to find a way to give back to these folks, because ultimately, like, the coaches in the club have moved past, like, let's call them employees, because for Dan and I, they're our friends. They're members of our inner circle now, and our families hang out, and it's more than just a coach. And to see someone like Matt and tell him, like, sorry, man, you have to do this for free all the time. Like, it's hard to say that, even though he buys into it. But whatever we can do from a stipend perspective, even for some of the younger, newer coaches, like they need that. And I think it's fantastic, and I'm glad we're able to do it.
Yeah. So you and I are in advertising. We get this, we talk about this a lot, or you hear people in our industry talk about this a lot, but it's like people that either get offered unpaid internships, or are asked to do design work or writing or UX work for free. And they're always told, like, well, but think about the exposure.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is absolute bullshit. Like, probably.
I just tried to pay AT&T with exposure for my cell phone bill.
So this passed, right?
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah, I believe it did.
Okay. Excellent. So that's one vote. The second vote, much like when we expanded to the U23 level, a club expansion, like adding a women's team demanded a vote. And much like the U23 expansion, this vote was purely to explore, right? To undertake the effort to start a women's team. Really no timeline tied to this. We still have to gather volunteers, still have to gather a lot of information and understand the feasibility of this. But really this vote was all about the intent of Minneapolis City to start a women's team, which is very, very exciting. So don't expect the team to pop up in 2021 at least, but it is something the club is building towards in the future now quite actively, right, John?
Yes. So essentially, another thing I'm excited for, another thing that we were asked about a women's team after our second year.
Yeah.
And we're like, what do we know about women's soccer? I grew up around women's soccer with my dad coaching it, but it's different. And I don't know if you remember when we talked to Jonathan Wardlaw from Little Rock, when we talked to him about him creating a women's team, and he said, it was so different from the men's side, where like simple things like, he can't like go into the locker room after a game and talk to the players, like stuff like that, where it's like, you don't think about those little things. But also just like how different it is from a playing perspective. It's still the same game, but it is different. And I think it's absolutely the right thing to do, to say, like, we absolutely want to put the effort into exploring this idea. However, much like everything we do, we want to make sure we do it right, because there's no use in doing it if you're not going to do it right. So there is that exploratory thing where we have to, put on our strategy hats and audit what others are doing and look at what we do as a club, and then start to think of things like financial stability, so it's not a one and done type thing. We also have to look at, the competitive landscape for women's soccer in the area is a little bit higher than the men's game at our level. There's already some well-established clubs that have teams in the type of league we would want to get into. So there's that. It's not an if you build it, they will come scenario, like it might be more so with the men's side. So we have to make sure that we look at everything and we really go into this with a concrete, foolproof plan, so that we pull it off. Because at the end of the day, it's still the same message that we have on our men's side, where we're trying to make Minnesota soccer better. And if we don't do it right, then it's going to take a step back for the women's game in Minnesota as far as how we're getting our hands on it. And we don't want that to be a thing.
And I mean, if we're going to do something, we're going to go all in. So
why half-ass it when you can whole-ass it? Exactly.
So very exciting for that to start to take shape in the coming years. And man, it's crazy again to see how this thing is growing. And finally, we voted on next year's member scarves, as we love to do. There were something like 5 options this year, one of which was just last year's option because we never got to wear it. And all of them were derivative of a kit or at least one of the team's key design elements, except John, for the scarf that won, the winner.
You don't like it.
The To the Moon scarf. It's vaguely retro honeymooners looking. It's fucking DreamWorks logo looking scarf. It's not that I don't like it. I think we both talked about it. Like every year, I think there is one design that is out there, man. It's made by crazies for crazies, and I think that the fact that it was on a slate of 5 other options, those 5 scarves really split the vote of sane-minded people, and all of the nuts voted for the To the Moon scarf, and it won. So whatever. It's pretty funny, and in light of what we talk of our next topic, I think it's totally apropos for what could potentially be a new crosstown rivalry. But I want to get your thoughts on this new To the Moon scarf.
So how much do you know about the To the Moon phrase and like its origin? Do you know anything about it? Or like,
what do you mean? Like outside of being from the honeymooners?
Yes, outside of that. Like,
No.
How is it in context with Minneapolis City? So
I cannot think about it right now.
So here's where I think it gets cool. Okay, like design aside, like I am 100% into some of our designs, and I'm 100% out of some of our designs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest about it. Like some of them they just aren't for me, right? But the concept of To the Moon came from the Fall League, and City midfielder and Gustavus senior Matt Gibbons was on one of obviously playing in the Fall League, and he was on the team that ended up winning the title. And we have a kind of a club WhatsApp group where there's a lot of shit talking in there, but it's just like everyone sharing articles on soccer, talking shit, just palling around. It's how guys connect to hang out off the field. Like it's our little like community that we have for club, inner workings of the club. Well, throughout the Fall League, as I believe it was the Morris Day and the One Timers, I believe was the team that they were on. That's who won, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it was the One Timers, and they were the yellow team. And every time they would win, he would say like "Yellow Team to the Moon," and we're like, "What the fuck does this mean?" And he's like, "We're unstoppable. We're on a rocket ship to the moon." And then, then all of a sudden, the Tackled by Turtles, they were the blue team. They started going on their run, at the end of after being hapless. They were, and then you get Steve and Elder in the chat saying like the blue team to the moon, and like it just like To the Moon got this like concept started. Oh. So it started with a player, and then it started with us thinking about like what's our club mantra internally. We have one every year. I mean, the back stronger. Like if some of you have seen those shirts around, or the back stronger. after we won the second title, we have a theme for each year. So then we decided like, yeah, it's kind of dumb, but it has meaning. It has meaning, and so the players are all in on it now. The inner working club staff's in on it, and then it's an option for the scarf. And like I said, design out the window. The mantra was then picked up by our fans as the one that they liked. So it was really cool, I think, that this like nugget of like positivity and like a rallying cry started with something stupid as Matt Gibbons talking shit in our group chat, to now being to where it's a mantra that we've latched onto, and now our fans like it.
Man,
so I think
somebody should have wrote like a Medium article about that or something in order to educate people, because that's a pretty great story.
Right. The things you get when only listening to the People's Pitch podcast, folks.
Yep. So now everyone should understand where To the Moon and our scarf came from for the next year.
Yep. So I guarantee you, next year, if we're on a rocket ship to the North Conference title, there's going to be a lot of Matt Gibbons to the moon talk.
To the moon. So, now I feel like an asshole, but oh well. So speaking of to the moon, John, let's talk about this announcement that the world has received this year, and it has been kind of framed up as this club's moonshot. So that's very funny that we've got the To the Moon scarf, because up next is something that you and we've been talking about behind the scenes a bit, and via social channels. I've been getting sniffs of this, including their promotion of something that they're calling the moonshot, and that is Joy of the People, the free play model youth club that was founded by former Blackhawks coach and internationals head Ted Croton. That Joy of the People is heading to the NPSL, and news broke today that confirmed it. So first of all, new club in the NPSL North. I think this is great. Heading into what would have been the 2020 season, I think we were down at least 2 clubs, maybe 3 if I'm remembering right.
We were down 3 clubs.
VSLT, Sioux Falls, and Twin Stars, right?
Yep, and then we added Milwaukee, which is going to probably lead to a different conference closer to their side of the world. So now still back down to 2 clubs, or down 2 clubs to start 2021 instead of down 3 where we were. But that's great, right? Extra games on the schedule, especially great because it's a local. In town.
Yep, it's in town, so it's easier for people to travel to see City play when it's just around the corner. So that is amazing. And I will say this: decent logo. Like league, this league needs more personality, and if anything, we can look forward to a matchup between the Crows and the Goats, which is funny to me for some reason. If you haven't seen the logo for Joy Athletic Club, it's a goat standing on the goalposts, which is really cool. Right. I like it a lot. I don't know who did it, but props to them. But to me, the addition of Joy Athletic Club to the NPSL North, really the big question is going to be what kind of players are they going to put out there, and how are they going to stack up against the rest of the NPSL North? We've talked about them on the show before. You know that I have been involved with Joy the People for a few years, as my stepson has played with them since he was probably 8 or 9 years old. And, I've coached his futsal teams and his soccer teams wherever possible. Traveled with the club and everyone to Kansas City for futsal tournaments and soccer tournaments. So I consider myself a Joy the People parent. And so
You're a goat.
I'm a goat, right? I'm also a goat, half crow, half goat at this point, which is which is an interesting combination. I want to see that chimera. But anyway, so, and I know Ted, and I know the guys that run that organization, that youth organization. And so I've seen all this come to fruition on social media. And Ted says that Joy is going to bring a totally different methodology, and this is a quote, bring a totally different methodology to development and to play, which I think is really true. Like the free play model has done wonders for our boy, does wonders for youth soccer, because these kids really first and foremost learn how to be confident on the ball on their own, right? It's not about the system of whatever club you're paying thousands of dollars a year to be in, from the beginning, which I really like. But what he says next kind of trips me up and makes me raise an eyebrow. He says, we will fill our team with homegrown players, awesome, who are very good at producing entertaining play. They are good at entertainment. They have learned soccer. They've learned soccer that way and have always made it fun for themselves and others. You will see a different brand of soccer. So that John, is really interesting to me. I know, and it's on their logo, but Joy of the People was founded maybe back in 2009. And I know that the oldest kids in their program are maybe 20. So I know that I know these older Joy kids. I've watched them play soccer, watched them play futsal, and I agree. Like they do have a really fun way of playing when they all play together. But my worry is that this could become an heiress situation when you drop it in the middle of the NPSL North.
I think it'll be a little bit different than an heiress situation, but I'll wait for my time.
No, I mean it's coming up, man. I mean, I think best case maybe they'll be at a level similar to Sioux Falls, right, was the Thunder. But I really worry what happens when this brand of soccer that is free and loose and really all about individual skill on the ball runs into a bunch of donkeys like Duluth. I mean, what are your thoughts? Like, where could they be pulling more players from that maybe give them some experience, some size, some age, and how competitive will their brand of soccer be in the NPSL North?
I mean, all loaded questions, Nate. First and foremost, I like a small segment of people really hope that it works out for them.
Yes.
Because I know, as not many people do, how difficult it is to pull this off. It's not only a huge financial commitment, it's a huge time commitment, it's a huge organizational commitment. It's not like you can't just jump into it. And I'm not saying they did, but you can't just jump into it and then expect it to happen. Like, you're going to fail if that's your way to go into it. You should actually go in expecting to fail and have a year of learning or 2 years of learning before you even think about the fact that things are going to be entertaining and happy and fun, right? Because this is the reality of the situation. Like, we put together what I felt was probably the best competitive side we could have in our first year, and we finished like 4th in a league of like 8.
Our first year of NPSL North or existence?
Existence.
Yeah, and even then, when we joined the NPSL North, we finished 3rd.
Yeah, and we had to figure out, like, how do you actually play in this league?
Yep.
And it was an adjustment of our intended style. Until we figured out the last 2.5, 3 seasons, how to win in our division.
Yep.
And what it truly takes. So I tip my hat to them with coming to the table with something unique, and I really do hope it works. But there's a chance that it might be a little bit of a learning curve. When it comes to the age of players, I look, actually before that, I look at the style and like the makeup of what Joy the People is. It's not a Yoga Bonito tiki-taki like Brazilian style of 11-a-side soccer. It's focused in the small-sided futsal and
Yep.
in small-sided dimension. We'll call them dimensions. So moving that into 11-a-side, when you go into our conference, and like you were saying, it's super physical. It's very hard to win in our conference. And people from the outside don't really get that because they look at like, yeah, Sioux Falls isn't really a soccer community. But yeah, try traveling there and trying to play in that weird-ass field in the summer when there's no shade and it's 110 degrees on the turf. Like, you're not going to have a free-flowing style when you can barely breathe because you're huffing in farm dust. Like, it's a reality of the situation. So I think that like the style of play can grow into an 11-a-side atmosphere, but it can't happen overnight.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope for them it does. I really want like a true rival in the conference again that's local outside of the Twin Stars. So I want it to happen, but it's going to take a little bit more effort than hopefully, or a little bit more effort. And I say that with a positive spin. I'm not trying to shit on anything. As far as the players go, as you said, like if it's going to be homegrown players, pretty much as it sits now, Twin Stars included with us, like that's where the top half of all of the best talent in the state at an adult age plays. And I would say, without, patting ourselves on the back, I feel as if we get the top half of that talent. And then you have the Twin Stars, which has, some members of the top half of that age group. And then, some of the best local players that are in more of the men's league players. Mm-hmm. So who else is left to pair with 20-year-olds? There are not a lot of people, unless there's staff members or they're going to be doing the recruiting that like a Duluth or a Med City does, where they're going to try to bring in,
it doesn't sound like it.
Like 25-year-olds that are NAIA seniors. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it'll have to be something like that if they're eventually to supplement the younger players that have promise.
Yeah, unless there's some MRSL team that they're pulling from.
Could be, but honestly, I like 70% of our guys on our top 2 teams play across multiple MASL teams. So it's going to be hard to just pull a talented squad unless you're taking the best players that are left. And then you're still looking at, in my opinion, a second tier from what we have shown we can put on the field in Twin Stars.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's going to be tough, but it's not impossible. Like it definitely isn't, but it's going to be hard. And, I'm excited about it. It's going to be in St. Louis Park, which means you don't have to drive to Milwaukee, which is unfortunate for me because I love a good Milwaukee trip. But for different reasons. So, I mean, I like it. I think the branding looks good. Like you mentioned, I think that their messaging is unique and it's their own, which I really enjoy because I don't like seeing a ripoff across the country, which we've seen a lot of it. That's kind of how our tier of soccer is very much a duplication effort in a lot of cities. Mm-hmm. So I like it. I really do.
I will say this, we talk about everything we're talking about is like, can they be competitive? And the funny thing is I tweeted out a mild taunt today from our podcast, account that basically said, hey, look, a new team for the Murder to beat. And in true Joy of the People fashion, Ted or whoever responded with a philosophical quote that really does embody the philosophy of Joy of the People, and that really is that winning isn't everything. It's something that I should have expected, knowing what I know and having come up with, through the club for a couple of years with my son, that like really it's something that you learn as a parent, that you don't need to scream on the sidelines. You don't need to be directing your kids' play as if you're helping, right? That like it's all, and you're all doing it as a parent because you want to see your kid win. But really the objective is, of course, just for your kid to learn and to have fun. And I think that's great. I think that's awesome. So I think hopefully this club can be entertaining and it can be competitive, and it probably won't win. And they're okay with that. I think the worry for me might be then is like, hopefully that brand of soccer is a draw, because otherwise financially it could be a struggle.
Right. And I mean, I have to believe that there are some of our younger players, whether they're futures players or MC2 players, that you may see move to play with them. And that's okay. I think it makes soccer better in Minnesota, which is our focus. We obviously want it to be better in our favor, but to make it better and to shed the spotlight on things. But I think what was lost in what we talked about was that if this truly is a play at continuing to develop players into an environment where we've seen you throw a 17, 18-year-old into it, the really good ones, like they can thrive in this environment, and it makes them better when they move on. Yeah. And they move into college, and it really is a selling point for people who are true joyers, right? That start their kids out at an early age, and then they grow through the program, and then now there's this thing, which is kind of the culmination of it. So I think that winning isn't everything potentially for them, and the true win for them is the further development of their players, and I'm all for that.
Totally. John, it sounds like Joy could possibly be helmed by either Ted himself or, and this is super interesting to our listeners because people might not know this, but ex-Minnesota United player Andrei Gotsmanov is basically the second in command over at Joy of the People, and he was a fantastic
player,
very, very good player, right, in his day.
Yep. I played against him in many men's league games, and unstoppable.
He's just an overall great dude too. He's been great to our kid. Mindy and I really like him, so we really wish him success in all games with Joy of the People except for 2. Mm-hmm. And I really do look forward to their visit to the Nelly and watching this team get settled into the NPSL North. It's going to be an interesting story to follow, and a fun local rivalry similar to what VSLT could have been.
Yeah, I think so, and I completely agree with you. I really hope that they are able to weather some organizational storms that every club in our league, not just our division, run into. So if any of you athletic Joy Athletic folks are listening, be prepared for some of those things because they will happen and you cannot stop them from happening. It's just the gravity of the situation. So be prepared for that stuff. Go out and do your thing, and we'll welcome you into the Nelly, and then we'll buy you Little Caesars after, like we do with everybody else.
Well, that's all for this week's show, folks. Thanks again to our show sponsor, Summit Brewing Company. If you have yet to try it, that dark infusion coffee milk stout is so good. You got it. You can only get it in the House Party 12-pack, the variety pack. So head on down to your liquor store today and get a little some of that before it's gone. A little some of the Summit, a more meaningful brew since 1986. If giving back to the community means a lot to you, maybe it is time to give to the club that gives back. You got to get your giving in before the year is over.
Mm-hmm.
Minneapolis City is a 501c3 that provides a safe, reliable, and fun environment for young people to play the beautiful game, as well as providing help to our newly formed Futures Program Scholarship Fund. So consider a tax-deductible donation to a true city-focused organization. If you have anything you want us to cover, we're running out of time on the year. It's just about time for the People's Pitch holiday break. But before that, if you have anything you want us to talk about, send us mail. It's easy. You just got to hit us up on Twitter at The People's Pitch or through email at mcscpodcast@gmail.com. All questions, comments, concerns, welcome from all the people out there. And finally, as always, you can hit the club up on Twitter at MPLS City SC. Remember, you can always head to twitch.tv/MPLS City SC to subscribe and join as we travel through the world of FIFA Ultimate Team with Max Stiegwert, Minneapolis City captain, and myself, occasional guests, Jonah Garcia. We had Evan Warwick from Forward Madison on the show last week.
That was a good one.
He's a good dude. I wish that he wasn't starting his own Twitch thing, because he'd be a great regular guest to have. But we take you through the Ultimate Team world with some City players that are very, very good at it, and myself, who is less good. So feel free, please check it out, subscribe, and follow. And that is it for this week. I have been Nate. That has been John. And until next time,
You got hoofed goats.
Poster burning maple weeds, cradle major keys. Thinking back, I've been major since the minor league. So supreme, too much sauce off my olive NMDs. I could staple steez, bend the goat so I get the cheese. Never fall, rake them leaves and make sure every moment gets seized. And everything I see is make